Hello and welcome to Waterford Property Watch. Today I'm joined by Anthony Walker, who is an architectural technologist. Today we're going to talk about all things Snaglist. How are you, Anthony?
Good now, and thanks for having me here. I appreciate it.
Of course. Yeah, first of all, we're going to dig right in. First of all, what is a Snaglist, Anthony?
Okay, well, there's two tiers of a snag list. It depends. If you're buying a new house, that's obviously a snag list. However, if you're buying a second-hand house, that's generally referred to as a pre-purchase report. Now, fundamentally, they're kind of the same thing, but in a snag list situation on a new house, you're always identifying defects, blemishes, all that type of thing that the builder may have caused, and you're looking to get those rectified, sorted out. If you are buying a second-hand house, you are then you're recording defects that you will carry with you on the purchase. So they're items you'll have to pay for to get to have them repaired and to improve the property and get it up to the spec that you want it to be.
Perfect.
So that's the difference between
second-hand and new home.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
So then, in terms, a snag list is only applicable then for a new home. So when is it typically created during the home buying process, a snag list?
Well, it'll be just shortly before closing off the sale. So the builder would announce, okay, we're ready for inspection. And they would tell the client then will come and look for someone like me to go and visit the property. Fundamentally to record, again, any defects, blemishes or damage that the builder may have caused. And that's presented to them then in a report. In my case, the report comes with accompanied with a photographic survey also. Now, I don't know, other snaggers may not do it that way. They have their own ways of doing it. I have my own way personally, and it works for me.
Yeah, I suppose, why do you think it is so important to get a snag list? I know you mentioned it brings up these defects.
Yeah.
If someone wasn't to get a snag list,
Well, as I always say, an issue is not an issue until it's identified. And, especially, we'll say, even in a situation like a second-hand home, it is buyer beware.
Yeah.
So if you buy a house with lots of problems, you are inheriting those problems. And, it's going to cost you, whatever amount to fix them. So you're better off to equip yourself with the knowledge going into the deal that this is what I'm going to have to spend to get this property up to the way I want it. And in the case of a new house, you are effectively leaving the builder off the hook. So if items are not identified and fixed, after the purchase, you're going to end up carrying out those repairs,
Yeah, and that's so true. And for first-time buyers who are watching, who might not know, who arranges for a snag list to be done and who appoints a snagger?
Well, it's generally the purchaser. So in a lot of circumstances, the purchaser solicitor will advise them on that. They'll open up the topic to them. You should get the property inspected by a snagger. Now, as I always say, the best person equipped to carry out a snag is a professional. It should never really be undertaken by the purchaser themselves unless they are competent in doing so, because they're just going to miss lots of stuff. And again, they're going to be inheriting those problems after they buy.
Yeah, and sometimes people may have a friend or a family member who might be in the industry, but you might relay the importance of hiring someone who it is their job to do snag lists.
Yeah, and I myself, I'm an architecture technologist, and fundamentally we are trained to the technical end of building practices. And, essentially someone such as myself is qualified and is the best person to do that job.
Yeah.
And essentially then the purchaser has that peace of mind that they're going into this deal knowing now they're fully equipped with the knowledge that this house is, good for, to buy or,
habitable. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Anthony, what does a professional snagging inspection involve?
Okay, so from my perspective, I will go into a property. I'll literally start at the front door, and then I'll take it room by room. So in each room, obviously, recording each snag item in that room. And that's the way it's presented to the client. So it's easy for them then to read down through it. Now, I know it can be a bit daunting and a bit frightening for them receiving a document, being lashed with information that they've, never seen before, because they are making a huge investment. But essentially, I will I will, like, say, for example, the kitchen. So are there the proper fire precautionary measures that are regulatory?
Yes.
Are they in the kitchen? So, for example, heat sensors in the kitchen area, smoke detectors throughout the property. And now you have to have them in every habitable room.
Yeah.
I will, like in a second-hand property, I will check for moisture in the kitchen. That's a big one. So even essentially behind the kitchen press, so you literally open the kitchen press, have a look in at the back. It's always a spot you'll see lots and lots of mildew, moisture, and all of that. Obviously not a problem in a new house, but in a new house, then you're looking for, the quality of finishes.
Some cosmetic things as well.
Cosmetic things.
Yeah.
Structural things obviously are a huge thing. You're always looking for them. Thankfully, I don't come across too many structural issues. The standards of building in Ireland now are a lot more improved than they were, several years ago. And
it's great to hear, yeah.
Yeah, that's thanks to a lot of building regulations, and, they're constantly updating them and that, especially around fire, for example. The new fire regulations are out at the moment. The part B of the building regulations deals with fire. The book is 3 times the size of the thickness of what it was. So there's quite a bit in that. I won't go into it now, but they're very, very new at the moment, obviously.
And that's why it's good to have someone professional to look at your home to adhere to these regulations.
Correct. Yeah, because if you do it yourself, you're not going to know. Most people don't even know what building regulations are.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and they don't need to know. And
they don't.
They just need to know to bring someone professional in who does know. Is that it?
Yeah.
And that's why you would recommend hiring a snagger.
Correct. And then on top of that, like, you obviously have, as another layer to the building regulations, you have BCAR, which is building control.
Yeah.
So they will enforce compliance with building regulations. So, they have an officer in, like, for example, in Waterford City Council, they have a building control officer. And, it is a serious thing nowadays, because, when you take the likes of house fires and that, it can be, a threat to life.
Yeah.
So we have to have everything just so,
Yeah. And that's great. And if you wouldn't mind pulling the veil back for me, and I know it's a vague question, but in terms of a standard 3-bed semi-detached house, just pull the veil back on how long would that typically take to conduct a snag list?
Okay, well, the inspection, the on-site inspection, will say generally it could take me 2 to 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
And then obviously to do up the report, it could take another 3 to 4 hours.
Right, okay.
So there's quite a bit in it.
Yeah.
It's not just kind of running around and jot it down on the back of a notebook. There's a bit more to it than
and so you're making a thorough.
Yeah. And as I said, I would do the photographic survey where applicable to accompany the written report as well.
From anything as small as a paint splash to anything as big as.
Correct. A lot of people that do snag, they have their own way of doing it. I personally have my way that works for me. I will pick up anything, no matter how minor it is. Just if the client wants to, omit it from saying it to the builder or whatever, that's down to them. But I will record it anyway.
Right. And in your experience, what are some of the most common snags list items you're coming across in these new builds lately?
Well, thankfully, as I said, they are minor enough. There's nothing too major nowadays. But like cutting corners, builders cutting corners, it's not really a thing anymore.
Right.
It's really kind of down to poor finishes. So blemishes in the plaster, blemishes in the paint, poor cutting. So paint cutting is where they're cutting the paint in around window frames, door frames, and even at the top of the ceiling to the wall to ceiling junction, I should say. So you obviously should have a nice steady line across that. Those kind of things are important because the devil is in the detail. Yeah. And these people, people are paying a lot of money for houses, and they should be right.
Yeah, I totally agree.
So other than that, you're talking, like, sometimes the client may have the floor coverings down. Right. Now, generally, I don't like to see that, because then I can't inspect the floor slab, concrete floor slab, or the floorboards upstairs. So I like to go in there when there's no floor coverings present.
Right.
And also, big issue I find when I'm snagging is, the developer in new houses, the developer won't have all of the services running to the house. So sometimes I go there's no running water. So I can't check the functionality of the shower, or if there's pipe noise in the taps, that kind of thing.
Maybe electricity with ESP.
Yeah, electricity. Sometimes there's no electricity.
Yeah.
And that's a thing as well, because like a lot of the air to water systems rely on electricity, obviously. So you can't inspect the heating system either. So
realistically, it is best for you to wait till water's connected and the ESP is connected for you to do a thorough examination.
Yeah, and even with the water, to go out and lift up the manholes outside, or the AJs as they're called, to inspect the sewers, that they're clear of any debris, they're fully functioning. I can't do that if, say, the toilet isn't flushing or the tap isn't.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
And I suppose that does lead me to my next question. In what I was going to ask, is there any areas of a house that buyers might often overlook, but you check maybe in your own way that you do it, that you think is unique?
Well, it comes down to finishes. A lot of the buyers won't cop a lot of the things that I will cop. They're not going to know about the correct type of insulation or the thickness of insulation. And insulation is really where that's the most important facet
that's where
of
your
the house.
expertise comes in, as opposed to something.
Yeah, it is. And it's in today's economy and everything else, people need to be able to heat their house easily in the wintertime. Gone are the days where we all live in houses that are, freezing cold. They don't function, or they don't function well in terms of heat retention. We have to have a system now, a systematic approach, where houses do meet that BER rating, the crucial A rating.
Yeah. Yeah, it's great to see in these new homes.
Yeah.
And can you talk to us a little bit about the difference, we'll say, between a structural crack and a settlement crack for those watching?
Yeah, I mean, a settlement crack is what you'd expect. So settlement cracks just, fundamentally, they kind of happen, in the early days of the house, the house's life. Structural cracks are a far more serious issue. That's due to movement or foundation failure. And you definitely don't want to have that. And thankfully, I don't come across that.
Right.
I don't think, in new houses, I haven't. I have come across them in older houses,
right.
Especially old buildings in around the city centre. Right. But in new houses, no, it wouldn't be generally a thing I would come across. And if it was, I'd get very, very concerned.
Right.
So.
And I suppose in your role, then, your role would be to highlight that.
Yes, absolutely.
And then it would be then up to the buyer then to maybe.
Yeah, exactly that. And I wouldn't, to be honest with you, I'm not a structural engineer.
Right.
And, architects or architecture technologists are legally not allowed to involve themselves in specifying structural issues or structural elements of a building. That is a structural engineer's role. So my job is literally to record any such defects and bring them to the attention of the relevant people. Now, I would always highlight that issue in the most noticeable way possible on the report. So that would be highlighting it in red text.
Right. Okay.
If there was an issue,
just to break it down and make it a bit more digestible.
Yeah. And they can pick it off. They can pick it off the list straight away. And I just literally tell them where the crack is emanating from, and basically how long it is, and that they should get a structural engineer to further investigate this.
Right. Okay.
And most importantly, they should get their own independent structural engineer, not the builders.
Okay.
So that would be a very sound piece of advice for somebody that.
But it's great to hear that you're saying it's very uncommon in new builds.
It is, and as I said, thankfully because of building regulations, current building regulations, and the regulations constantly being updated, this kind of eliminates these kind of bad builders from the world. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so building practices have vastly improved over the last 20 years. building regulations came out first in 1991. And they've, over the years, they've been updated and added to and everything else. And a lot of the time, they've been added to because certain situations have arisen out in the field.
Yeah.
So the department will say, okay, well, say with a fire, we need to upgrade the, cladding systems or whatever else. We need to look at those, and we need to make sure that they are up to scratch now, so that they're not, they don't pose a threat.
And these updated regulations are even more of a reason to hire a professional to do a snag list.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And then in terms of, obviously I know the process, but for those watching who are first-time buyers maybe, so you've conducted your snag list, you've given them the list then with the amendments. The builder has said they've done the items that are on the list.
Yeah.
So what happens then in the case of maybe re-inspections or talk us through the process there? Yeah,
so basically once I hand the client the snag report, or the pre-purchase report, we'll say snag report. We'll give the example here that it's a new build. They'll go back to the builder and they'll have a chat to him about all of the contents on the report. The builder then will be given a certain amount of time to rectify all of those. Now, a lot of the time, especially in today's climate, we'll say, a lot of people are in a hurry to get into their houses for one reason or another, whether they're renting and their contract is due to expire or whatever. They're in a hurry to get in. So the builder's time limit will be fairly pressed on it. But once he has those fixed, or once he says he has them fixed, the purchaser then has the choice to get me back to have a second round inspection to make sure that everything is done and that it's done up to a satisfactory level.
Right.
And, I do that quite a bit, the second visit. And thankfully, the list is minuscule towards the original list.
Yeah.
So there are, of course, there are going to be a few trailblazers that haven't been fixed, or they're not fixed properly, or to my satisfaction or whatever. So generally then I'll do the second report, and the same as the first time, give it to the client or the purchaser. They'll go back to the builder. Now, generally, I wouldn't go back for a third visit. They would...
Maybe a picture to show them.
Yeah, exactly. And if they have any issues, they can always ring me.
Yeah.
There's no issue. But generally speaking, I will, once I hand the first or the second report to the purchaser, I will either follow it up with a phone call or an in-person visit, and actually guide them down through it, talk them through each one, because I know it's hard to understand sometimes, It can
be overwhelming for a first-time buyer.
Absolutely.
Seeing some of these items. Yeah. But I suppose when it's broken down by someone like yourself, it can help a lot.
Yes, exactly. And it just, like there's a lingo as well that builders understand and normal people won't.
You translate it for the buyer.
Yeah, and I say, look, this problem is probably occurring because or whatever. Even though generally I wouldn't kind of specify why a problem has occurred, but out of a common courtesy, you'll kind of extend that opinion to the purchaser, just to kind of put him in the picture somewhat. But if it's as like a structural problem, I would be telling them to get a structural engineer,
of course,
their own independent one, as I said.
Yeah. So Anthony, if someone wants to get in contact with you, what is the best way to do it?
Yeah, very easily. They can contact me via my email, which is decca, decca.arch@gmail.com. Or alternatively, they can just give me a call on 085 752 9727. And I'd be happy to offer my services to them.
Brilliant. So that's been another episode of Waterford Property Watch. I want to thank Anthony for coming in and talking about snag lists. If you have any questions, feel free to contact us.